Hey guys, how are you? We are back. What if Naruto was Sword Tenchi and Princess as his teacher's movie? Deep within the forest of the Fire Country lays a shrine that is but a simple shrine to many that pass it by. However, legend tells of how a demon was sealed there long ago after it fell from the sky. The demon, before being sealed, had caused much destruction to the people of the land, and many suffered under it. Thankfully, there was a warrior that came to the aid of the people, riding a flying ship. The warrior's name was Yasho. He was a powerful warrior wielding his great and powerful sword. There are many who wonder where Yasho came from and wonder where he had obtained the power to fight the beast, many comparing him to the Rakuto Sennin. Yasho bested the beast and sealed it away in a cave near a shrine, and to this day, the demon sleeps in its prison as the sword remains planted in the ground watching over the demon. But the land of fire would yet face another threat of a demon, the Kyuubi no Kitsune. The fox demon had appeared a few times in the country's history and in other countries, and many sought out its power. Eventually the beast was sealed away and many put it out of their minds until the fateful night it had escaped. Many lost their lives in an attempt to contain the beast's destruction, and nothing that was done seemed to slow it down. There was however one who could do something. Minato Namikaze is the fourth Hokage. Minato was known as the most powerful ninja in the land of fire and the ninja village of Konoha for his triumphs in the war and for taking out an entire army on his own. It was a tragedy that night as Minato gave his life to reseal the beast away, but many did not know all the events that led up to him sealing away the beast, and no one would. Breaks. The events after the sealing are another story, so let us turn our attention into the not-so-distant future. 12 years after the resealing of the Kyuubi, we find ourselves looking on a small boy sitting on a swing set. His name is Naruto Uzumaki. The fourth sealed the Kyuubi into him, but at the moment that was unknown to him. Naruto sighed sadly as he looked over at the students who passed the genin. Soon Naruto cold and take seeing and hearing the happy graduates and their families and left, to which many parents smiled at seeing the demon being miserable. Mizuki showed up minutes later and frowned at not seeing his intended victim, and he too walked off to come up with a new plan. Breaks. Naruto was walking through the woods of Konoha and came to the foot of a mountain. He sighed as he thought about how he had failed for the third time and began to think if he should be a ninja or not. Even if he did pass next time, no one would ever take him seriously, so why bother now? His whole life was dedicated to being Hokage, but every time he took the genin exam that goal seemed further and further away. Naruto sighed again before seeing a shire nearby. Maybe if he pried he'd get some idea of what he should do. Naruto walked up and rang the bell on top of the well before he began to pry. An old man nearby saw Naruto and admittedly knew who he was. Of course he couldn't tell Naruto of his relation to the boy because he never had the nerve to tell his own daughter or granddaughter. Naruto, my dear great-grandson, I wish I could help you, but at least I can speak to you. He then walked up behind Naruto. Lovely evening, isn't it? Naruto nearly jumped out of his skin hearing the old voice behind him. This is a shrine dedicated to Yasho. Who is Yasho? 700 years ago a demon appeared. Its power was great and evil. Yasho was the man who rode a dragon and used a mighty blade to seal the demon Ryoko into the cave up there, said the elderly Shire Keeper, pointing to the area where the demon was sealed. Whoa, Naruto said, wondering how powerful the sword had to be in order to seal a demon. Before Naruto knew it, the old man disappeared as quickly as he appeared. Naruto then smiled. Prying did pay off. I'm going to see the weapon that holds a demon. Maybe I can use it, Naruto thought as he rushed off to find this legendary blade. Naruto made his way to the cave they held the sealed demon, which if he remembered was named Ryoko, odd name for a demon. Really, he thought to himself as he walked toward the cave opening. It was an odd thing. He felt so calm, collected and at ease at the cave entrance of a demon. It was as if someone was there with him. I shouldn't bother with that stuff right now. Time to see this so-called magic sword that holds the demon at bay, he thought as he entered the dark cavern. Inside of the cave he came to a gate with a lock that was easy to pick, being a ninja hopeful. After entering he came to an open area which had a rock held by ropes with sutras attached to them. Looking round he wondered just how powerful the demon Ryoko was if it was held here. He then took note of a small shrine at the end of the room. Wonder how the so-called blade looks after so many years, he said, opening the shrine and pulling out the sword. When he pulled it out, he took note of the hilt as it looked to be made of pale wood and had 3 red ruby gems placed on each side. The sheath of the blade was brown and pulling out the blade with some effort revealed the metal to be practically the same color with all the rust. This is supposed to hold a demon at bay. Bet this thing would break like glass. Now to test such theory he swung the blade, but didn't realize before it was too late and ended up hitting the rock and the blade shattering like glass. Oh, that's not good, he thought in worry. The area began to rumble and a large stone above dropped down to the floor, while the roots behind him began to recede before a crack appeared in the walls. Wonder if I can fix this before that old man notices, he muttered before looking back and seeing an opening in the wall passageway. He said, confused, walking over to it, the broken sword's hilt in his hand, squeezing through his foot, stepped in something cold water. He muttered, pulling himself out the opening and seeing a slide going down into the earth. I know I shouldn't, but I've come this far, he said, stepping forward to slide down, but not noticing the low ceiling and banging his head and making him slip down the slide and ended up hitting the bottom head first. Ow, sigh, that's what I get, he said, picking himself up and rubbing the back of his head. Looking around, he saw it was a much larger open area than above, filled with stepping stones with water flowing between them, with an intricate pattern leading to the center which he presumed was a small pond. He walked toward the pond, but felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up, but failed to notice the gems on the hilt light up. When he got to the center, all he found was a giant glowing light. Didn't expect that, he said in surprise, but then again, what was he expecting? Wait, that's not all. He then took note of the mummified corpse of the demon, Ryoko, its bones bare to see with flesh still clinging to them. A red oni mask on its face and cyan hair on its head. Strange, it has a human shape, he said, leaning over focusing on the mask, not noticing the sword hilt slip from his fingers. As it clanged on the floor, he jumped in fright, looking left and right before calming down. Geez, I'm jumping at shadows, haven't done that for a long time, he said, picking up the hilt, only to have a mummified hand grab his wrist. Naruto froze, feeling the cold fingers, and turned his head slowly to the corpse that was rising out the water. All the while several orbs of light were floating round them. Naruto freaked, trying to get out the corpse's grip, but it held tight on his wrist. Oh, come on, he said in frustration, but despite his strength, the demon was stronger and pulled him to his knees before gripping his shoulder, holding him in place. He watched as it raised its right hand. Well, this isn't how I pictured my death, he thought grimly, as the demon's hand touched his face, but instead of tearing at it, the hand caressed his chin, only for the sword hilt to glow and release a surge of energy on the corpse just as it brought its face in close. The demon cried out, releasing Naruto from its grip as he scuttled back and stared at the demon's corpse in mild fright, watching as its eyes glowed yellow before running away like a madman up the path. When he got to the top, he pulled the broken rock back together and used a vine to tie it back together as the passageway began to close. When it had fully closed, Naruto breathed a sigh of relief, still not noticing the sword's gems glowing, and didn't see as they stopped glowing too. Meanwhile, in a small pond nearby, a large single tree sitting in the middle of the pond that was a halfway to Konoha started to do something strange. The tree's leaves began emitting small strands of rainbow light that all touched the water and began reflecting it up into the sky in a beautifully show of colors that many didn't see. Only time would tell what this event meant. X. A couple hours later, Naruto was sitting on top of a random building in the empty part of the village. What's the deal with this sword? He said as he examined the hilt before hearing the sound of a bell. He looked round and for the sound of the bell, but couldn't find it, so he went to stand before hearing the bell again. He looked back to see the cat that was known to wander Konoha. Oh, it's you, what are you doing here? He said, ushering the cat over as he liked cats. The cat meowed and ran toward him, but as Naruto bent down to pick it up, it vanished into thin air. Naruto blinked at this. Okay, maybe I slept the wrong way, he summarized before the sound of the bell echoed over again. Turning round, he spotted a woman in a tree swinging her legs back and forth. Naruto was now on edge as he felt the woman's power, and it was insanely high, but she was also incredibly beautiful, and strong. Beautiful women were dangerous. The woman wore a pink dress that was over a green kimono top that seemed to be tailored for battle, but also could be wore anywhere else. Her hair was unique as it spiked backwards and was cyan in color. Her ears were also unique, being elongate and rounded at the end, but her face was beautiful, and her yellow eyes that seemed to be silted like a cat attracted him to her a little. He then took note that the sound of jingling was coming from the bells in her left hand, which she held to her face, before throwing it to Naruto, who caught them, keeping his eyes on the woman in either caution or in admiration of her looks. He wasn't sure. Ryoko, she said softly but loud enough for him to hear, making Naruto go wide-eyed. That's my name, she smiled. Crap, so this is how die, by the hands of this surprisingly beautiful demon. His thoughts wandered before shaking his head. So Yaur, he gulped nervously before several balls of orange light appeared around her. Yaur, the demon from the cave, aren't you? He asked, slightly hoping she said no. Ryoko hugged herself, hearing that it was so dark and cold in there. She said with Naruto hearing genuine pain in her voice, 700 years have passed since I was trapped in that cave, but you know your own pain, don't you, Naruto? She said the last part without him hearing. So Naruto began getting into a battle stance, secretly regretting not having his ninja tools on him, as he only used them near the training grounds. You came back for revenge, right? He asked. Right, she answered back with a straight face. You do know that I'm not the guy Yasho who sealed you, right? He asked, hoping to not fight Ryoko as he knew he stood no chance. I don't care, was her response as the orbs of light gathered to her hand, forming a larger ball of orange light. She then gripped it, turning it into a blade of energy. I just need to let out my anger on you right now, she said as she charged forth at Naruto. Fuck was it, he could mutter as he jumped away as Ryoko slammed the blade on the ground, forming a crater. Oh goody, strength worthy of being a demon, was his thoughts as he said of running as Ryoko, then threw the beam sword at him, which exploded on contact with the ground, and she has explosive capabilities. What's next? He said as he began running through the empty streets. Ryoko however caught up with him easy floating above the houses. "What's the matter, Naruto?" she said as she swung her sword at him. Naruto ducked under her swing and discreetly went through hand sign substitution jutsu, he whispered just as she swung at him again and simply cut through a log with her beam sword. "Well, that was actually impressive," he muttered before shaking his head. He used the substitution jutsu again before running away from the smiling Ryoko. So the chase begins. The best way to play with Naruto. You really know what a girl wants, she said, shooting a ball of energy at the retreating form, but again Naruto used the substitution. Naruto, he was hiding, trying to think up a plan as deal with the power that Ryoko possessed. He doubted she was a slouch to unarmed combat as she was plenty fast as well as strong, but also seemed to be able to teleport around, not to mention she was sealed for 700 years and lived for who knows how long before that, so she likely had hundreds of years of experience. Well, she's super strong, fast, can fly, make beam swords and energy blasts, both of which were orange, which I approve of. Teleport, what can't this woman do, he thought as he substituted again to avoid another energy blast. Great, well at least I can be pretty stealthy when I need to be, he said as he hid in a house, then he sniffed the air. What's that? Oh, it's only gas. I need to get out of here, he said as he tried to leave only to stop as he heard Ryoko's voice call Naruto, which echoed all around the house. Where is she? He asked himself, trying to sense her. Naruto, the voice echoed again, putting Naruto on edge and not knowing where he was, only for him to end up. Hello there, said Ryoko behind him, her head sticking into the house wall while the rest of her was outside it. He was about to get up but then found an energy blade close to his neck. Now we can't have you run off again. You and I are gonna spend some quality time together, Naruto, she said in a sultry voice, making him blush. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Maybe I should stop. No, I am not a pervert, even if the girl behind me is really hot. Wait, I know what to do, he thought to himself, raising his arm. Hey, what's that outside the window? He shouted. I am truly ashamed of myself for that one. It's the oldest trick in the book. There's no way that would work. Imagine his surprise as the blade disappeared and he saw her face looking to where he pointed. What is it? She asked giddy. Naruto blinked in surprise before running away as fast as his legs could carry him while going unheard. Guess she older. Then the trick is, then again she was sealed up for 700 years and has been around for who knows how long before that. So you gonna tell me what I'm looking for? She asked as turned back to where he was before. Seeing that he was gone, she realized she had been tricked. Lightning crackled around her, causing the gas to ignite and explode. Break X. The Hokage in battle gear and a large group of Anbu had been watching since the beginning. She's a terrifying opponent, said the third Hokage with a scowl, wishing to help the boy he saw as a grandson. He knew he couldn't as the woman seemed even stronger than all four Hokages combined, plus with her strange abilities, they won't even scratch her. Indeed, Lord Hokage, most jonin would last half this long, but this dead last actually tricked her into killing herself. Perhaps the boy should receive a field promotion. The other Anbus nodded. Naruto had done very well, to the point they would say he lasted longer than they could have with her abilities. Despite their years of training and missions, they doubted they had instincts of that level, and the way he used substitution to keep himself alive was very well done. The others nodded, but then they saw the woman in the fire walking toward Naruto. Is she immortal or something? Asked one Anbu. The others shuddered. She was worse than Orochimaru. Break X. Walking through the middle of the fire was Ryoko, and he could tell she was mad from the look on her face, like Sakura was when he insults Sasuke or asks her out. Hey, that's no way to treat a lady. She shouted as she flew forward, and Naruto was too stuck to do anything until she stopped by window and her appearance, and seeing her face and hair slightly messed up. My goodness, I'm a mess, she said before she began straightening herself up. Safe, he thought, making his getaway. Many female Anbu sweat dropped seeing such a powerful woman care so much about her appearance during a battle, but given her power, they couldn't say it was stupid due to the fact that she seemed unkillable. Break X. As he kept running, Naruto was thinking of what the hell he could do to incapacitate Ryoko, seeing as he probably wouldn't be able to kill her, not that he wanted to. He then remembered something important. When she focused her power, the gems on her wrist were glowing. The gems look the same as the one on the sword, so if I take it out I might pull through this. That's it, he said, running before running into something soft knocking him onto his, but and looked up to see Ryoko. You done running, sweetie pie? She asked, smirking as she saw the blush on his face. He then remembered the one piece of equipment he had on him and reached into his back pocket to get it. How could I forget I had this? Here's nothing you can use that will be able to beat me, said Ryoko, forming another beam sword. And don't worry, it won't hurt too much, she said, swinging down. However, her sword didn't hit him, but instead was blocked by his own blue beam sword. Sorry, I don't like pain, said Naruto with a small grin. That's not playing fair, Naruto said. Ryoko as he continued to grin. Ninjas don't play fair, he said, pushing her away before the two engaged in a small sword fight. Ryoko struggling against Naruto as she usually went for a brute strength approach. He knew better than try to attack as she was faster and stronger, so he played the defensive. Naruto was feeling the pain of her strikes in his arms from when they clashed, but as the two came to clash once more Naruto got a good look at her face and saw it pain and loneliness. He then felt it hit him just like me, he thought, unintentionally pushing back less and letting her blade come closer. Seeing this alarmed her as she curved her blade out of the way of him, but the sword in his hand seemed to act on his own and moved his arm, so he cut off her hand just under the wrist where the gem was. The gem landed on the ground and exploded, and the two were left staring at what had just happened. Eventually he stood up, deactivating the sword and looking at it for a couple seconds before putting back in his pocket. Ryoko sighed sadly. "Oh well, another battle lost," she said to herself. "Story of my life," she muttered, raising her handless arm to her head, noticing she was missing an aura. "I'm sorry about the hand, the sword has a mind of its own," said Naruto, apologizing a little sheepish as he hadn't meant to cut off her hand. She just smiled and charged energy into her remaining index finger. She covered the stump and swept her hand along it, and as if by magic her hand was regrown. "Ah," she said. She smiled, showing both her hands. Naruto was surprised and gave her applause on her healing abilities. She gave a bow goodnight, she said, phasing into the ground, leaving Naruto on his own. X break X. "What a night," muttered Naruto at home. He unzipped his orange jacket, leaving him in just a black shirt before sitting on his bed and taking out the sword again. "This blade, it's powerful if it was able to cut through Ryoko so easily. Wonder what happened to her. She was pretty cute, but her eyes held a tortured past like me. Kinda hope we can meet again," he said to himself, lying back on the bed. Although he felt that the bed was a little lumpy and seemed to be squirming under the sheets, what the he pulling back the bed sheet. Imagine his surprise when he saw a familiar head of cyan hair sleeping in his bed. She turned over from her side, revealing her open top, showing Naruto she went braless as he could see her partially bare right breast. Feeling the bed sheets uncovered, woke up the sleeping Ryoko, who turned her gaze to him. "Welcome home, Naruto," she said softly, making Naruto step away from the bed in surprise at finding a hot girl in his bed. "You have got to be kidding," he said as he clapped his hand together and prayed for the strength to deal with this. Outside the planet atmosphere of the planet Naruto was on was a spaceship of alien origin. It was kind of weird since the ship itself was made out of wood. Inside the ship, the main bridge, from what it looked like, opened up to show a woman in royal-looking garments. The two pillars of logs beside the entrance turn and show that both of them had kanji on them, the left one being blue and the right being red. "All systems activated. Unlock the time freeze now. All systems synchronized to breach standard time," said one of the pillar logs. Once that was said, the seemingly sleeping beauty opened her eyes to show them to be a reddish-pink color. Her long purple hair covered by the hood of her royal robes. From what one could tell, she was neither pale or tanned in color of skin, just fair. She stepped out of her cryogenic sleep area and looked up to see they were close to a planet. "What planet is this?" she asked her guardian logs in her sophisticated sounding voice. "Colonized planet number 0315 Fifth Earth," answered the deeper voiced log. "Then this must be where my Ani-sama, Yasho is," she summarized, sounding relieved, suggesting she's been looking for him. "No, all we detect so far is Ryoko," said the deeper voiced log. "Not that woman." The woman scowled, showing her distaste for the demon. "What does this mean?" she asked. "We have yet to detect Yasho's ship, but he was in pursuit of Ryoko. Logically it would follow," said the log, but was cut off. "That woman and Ryoko must be caught to be trialed formally at planet Juri as soon as possible," said the woman firmly. "Aika-sama," said one of the logs, catching the now named Aika's attention as a profile of Ryoko came up on the monitor with her picture smiling. "Unfortunately, all of Ryoko's crimes are to be erased by Galaxy Police by statute of limitations at Galaxy Time 00432, or in other words, 5 seconds. But that said, a counter began counting down the final seconds, and Aika looking irritated by this fact as the counter hit 0. A beep tone was heard confirming the time. "As of this moment, the statute of limitations has taken effect and Ryoko's Galaxy Wanted file has been destroyed," informed the deep-voiced log. "Destroyed?" said Aika, confused and angered. "Answer me, why is this?" she demanded, seeing she had a deep loathing of Ryoko. "The statute of limitations is based on decisions made by the Holy Council on Juri," the log began to explain. "That is not what I have asked for. I am asking why the woman is not being sought for all eternity," she asked her logs. "The statute of limitations is based on decisions made by the Holy Council on Juri," the log repeated. "Never mind, the only clue left is that woman. We must capture her at any cost," she said, not letting the woman go. "But the statute of limitations," the log tried to point out. "This is an order. We will think of a reason," she told them, her voice leaving no room for argument. "Yes, mom," the other log replied. "That's more like it. Now prepare for descent," she said, knowing what she was doing was for the better. "Anti-air guard, storming level 4, said one of the logs. "Be well, Ani-sama, please be well," Aika said softly, hoping for her brother's health. "Sbreaks." Back in the room with Naruto and Ryoko. Ryoko, can you please tell me why you're in my bed? She got up from the bed, buttoning back her clothing and held out her hand. Now I want your balls please, she asked nicely. Naruto, quick as you can blink, headed back to the wall. I kinda need these, he said, covering his gentleman's area. This caused Ryoko's face to scrunch up in irritation. You numbskull. I meant the 3 gems on your sword, she said, annoyed as Naruto went. Oh, that's more reasonable. Phew, he said, relieved, but we can get to that sort of thing later. But I need those gems, she told him, smirking, seeing his face flush. Has fun to tease. And just look at him, she thought to herself, admiring the developing muscles under the shirt. You do know him only 12, right? He asked, hoping she wouldn't do the things she likely had in mind, as he wasn't ready for them. So, I'm a demon that hundreds of years old despite looking like I am in my 20s, age doesn't mean a thing to me, she said with a predator's grin as Naruto gulped. He really hoped she was joking. So why do you need these gems? Because without them I can summon Ryooki, Naruto blinded in confusion. What's Ryooki? Don't tell me you don't know what that is, she said, sighing. It's the other demon from the legend, you dimwit, she said, answering his question. I'd like to point out that legend is hundreds of years old, and I only heard about it today, and I didn't hear the whole thing, so forgive my arrogance, he pointed out, pulling out the sword. So if I give you these gems the other demon will come back? He asked her as she walked toward him. No ifs about it, give them to me, she said, crossing her arms. No, he said, deadpan, besides you were tearing up the land on your own. Fine, so I don't think I need another demon here, would be good. 2's company, 3's a crowd, he said. She grabbed him by his collar. Are you sure? The one approaching us right now is even worse, she said to him, her face very close to his. Huh, what do you mean? He questioned the woman. Never mind, just give me the sword, she said, making a grab, but found she wasn't holding him anymore and he was behind her in a flash. No way, you're not getting this, he said before being tackled to the bed or straddling him. I like this position, she muttered, making him blush, and seeing her chance grab the sword from his hand, she giggled, holding it right before it glowed and electrocuted her, blasting her into the door. Damn it, she said. Naruto got up and grabbed the sword, looking down at the woman. Looks like you can't touch this thing, can you? You okay by the way? He asked, smirking down, but a little worried as he didn't like to see people get hurt. Ryoko looked up and pouted, knowing he had the upper hand. No, and I'm fine, was her answer. Ryoko looked up, almost looking like she was going to cry. Please, I'm begging you, she said, grabbing the bottom of his black shirt, never liking to see girls cry. Naruto crouched down. Hey, don't cry, just tell me what's coming, Ryoko, he asked, his voice soft. She turned her head. A devil, chess like a devil, she grabbed his shoulder and drew circles into his chest with her finger. She's so dangerous and mean, she'll fire at you without giving you a teeny weeny little chance to explain, she said cutely. Spreeks. Aika sneezed and looked left and right to see if she could find someone talking about her. Seeing there was none, she turned her attention back to the monitor. Begin the capture process as soon as we arrive, and you must remain from firing, she ordered her. Logs? Yes, mom, said the younger voiced Log. The monitor began bringing up close-ups of the planet until you could see Naruto's house. We will soon arrive at our destination, said the deeper voiced Log to his charge. Spreeks. Are you sure this person can't be just talked to? I really don't want to start any unnecessary fight anymore, Naruto asked Ryoko, hoping to avoid another dangerous confrontation. Ryoko just shook her hair at him. Is she really that bad? Ryoko looked up at him with her big eyes. Yes, listen to me, we need to wake up Ryooki now, she told him, still using her sweet voice. So you're going to summon it, fight, right? He asked, a little worried, having a demon and unknown force attack each other, especially with his mother's house at Rick and his grandfather too. No, well run, she answered, simply, making Naruto sigh in relief. The sight of what looked to be wooden-like spaceship outside made his jaw drop. Wah, what the hell is that? He exclaimed. The ship hovered over the home, shooting out searchlights. Ryoko-san, come out, ordered a voice from the ship. Ryoko phased her body halfway through the wall, shocking Jiraiya and making him fall from the tree. What the shit, I knew it, she's already here, she said, and Naruto opened the window and poked his head and went wide-eyed, seeing Aika's ship. Ryoko-san, you must come out. I know that you are in there, you cannot get away from me now, Aika commanded before looking over to one of her logs. Are you sure this is on? She whispered. Yes, mom, it confirmed for her. Well then what is she doing? She asked herself. Oh, never mind, I want you to fire a warning shot nearby, she told her guardians. I thought we were to refrain from firing, pointed out to Aika, who blushed, being caught contradicting herself. That's an order, she said plainly. On the outside of the ship, 2 cut-looking bamboos and 6 long sticks between them appeared on the bottom of the ship. The small cannon shot out an energy shot that hit close to the village, making a large explosion and shockwave breaking the windows of the apartment. Naruto shielded himself and Ryoko from the blasts, holding her close, only noticing his position once the shockwave had passed. You see, she said, smiling at him as he nodded and backed away slowly, him muttering sorry. Yes, but what should we do, Ryoko? He asked worriedly. She put on a mischievous smile for a second before looking at him. Well, for starters, why don't you point the sword toward me and pray to have the jewels returned to me, she explained to him as he nodded. That's all I have to do. Okay then, he said, pointing the sword and closing his eyes to pray. Ryoko held out her hands to the sword, closing her eyes too. On the sword the top red gem began to glow before appearing on Ryoko's left wrist. Both then opened their eyes to see if it had worked, but Ryoko looked surprised at something looking at both her wrists. What's going on? You only gave me one, she said, pointing to said gem. That's right, he said, deadpan, knowing people can be tricky like himself at times. Ryoko laughed nervously at being caught before muttering, well, it'll do. She lifted the gem into the air, making it glow before crossing her arm over the other, then held out her hands, as if she was holding something. Come Ryooki, she muttered. Awaken, she called, as deep in the lake close by the cave, there were ripples in the water. Come, she called. But the cry Ryooki emerged from the lake, shooting into the sky. Back on Aika's ship, alarms went off as another ship was detected. It's Ryooki, reported one of the logs. There you are, you heinous criminal battleship, said Aika with anger laced in her voice. Attack the ship. Fire now, she ordered as the underside of her ship began firing of the other as it hovered over the clan home surrounding in some sort of field. What the heck is going on, Ryoko? Asked a slightly panicking Naruto, not liking how close the space battle was to his home. Let's go, Naruto, she said happily as the gravity was turned off and the two of them were pulled up into the ship, and as they were, the house vanished into thin air. Appearing on the main bridge, Ryoko looked toward the many crystals in it. Okay Ryooki, let's make out, get away, she said with a smirk as the ship blasted away with a very animal-like call, dodging blasts from Aika's ship. Stretching her arms behind her, Ryoko sighed happily. Yes, this is the feeling, it's good to be able to move freely, she said as Naruto looked over the flattened version of his home. It's alright, isn't it, Ryoko? He asked. She smiled down at him. It's fine, I just shrunk it, so don't worry, Naruto. She knew it was the only place he could live. Ryoko looked angry at this. Damn it, you annoying little, she mentally commanded Ryooki to attack as a laser fired from the bottom spike of the ship towards Aika's, hitting it. Launch counterattack, commanded Aika as she steadied herself from the hit. Ryoko meanwhile had a smirk on her face before she clutched her head in pain as Ryooki on the outside became surrounded by small bamboo shoots. Inside, Ryoko screamed as she felt herself being constricted by the bamboo shoots. She cannot escape us, said Aika. Azaka, Kamadik, go and capture her, she ordered to her logs. Yes mom, they said, teleporting away. Ryoko, what's going on? Asked Naruto, concerned for the girl he just met. About to help her stay back, she cried as he was pushed away as the two logs appeared on the ship. As she spotted the two, she managed to mutter Juri guardians before being swallowed by one of the logs. Ryoko. Naruto cried seeing this, but then felt something heading toward him, a large log with giant red kanji on it. What on? In his hesitation, the log managed to swallow him as it had Ryoko, his vision going dark as it did so. Spreeks. Later, high above the Earth's atmosphere on Aika's wooden ship now holding Ryooki, Aika was sipping tea calmly as Ryoko hung captured upside down. It's been a while, hasn't it, Ryoko-san? I've been looking for you for some time, she said with a small smile. Ryoko didn't respond to Aika. May I ask you one question? Why did that earthling have this sword with him? She asked, holding the wooden sword that she had taken from Naruto. Ryoko remained silent. Answer me, said Aika, getting frustrated, but Ryoko just smirked at her. Seeing this, Aika's eye twitched, turned to Azaka and Kamadik, sending them a silent order. Following the order, the two began sending blasts of electricity into Ryoko, but instead of screaming of pain, they got something along the lines of stop, stop. That tickles, hahaha, she shouted. Enough. Cried Aika with a small blush, hearing Ryoko's response to torture. This seems to have an opposite effect on you. You're behaving like what's it called? She asked, forgetting the term. A masochist. Answered Azaka. Ah yes, that's what they're called. She accepted the response from her guardian. Actually, Oju-chan, more like a sadist, corrected Ryoko to the purple-haired princess. Oh my does that you like to. She stopped, realizing what she was asking about. Oh never mind, that's completely irrelevant, she said as Ryoko smirked, as she always found it fun teasing the girl. I'll ask you again, why did that young man have this sword? She asked, walking closer. The woman. Ryoko turned to Aika. You bonehead, she called the woman a. Aika responded, confused. Don't you feel it in his blood? She questioned. You're not answering my question, said Aika in irritation. Because the sword is his, Ryoko elaborated to the princess. However, this wasn't the response she wanted. Don't be ridiculous, you know this sword belongs to my Oni-sama. Now where is he? Where is Yasho? She asked, slightly loosing her calm front. Half-brother, you mean, said Ryoko with a small smile. You came all this way just to look for him? Aika's face had puffed up at the audacity of the woman. Things must be dull on planet Juri. You royal types must be bored, she taunted, which was a bad idea. Silence, criminal, how dare you, she said, scowling at Ryoko. Well, said Ryoko, smirking at getting under her skin. My Oni-sama's disappearance all started because of you, she accused. So that's how it happened? said Ryoko acting like she forgot. At her patience ends, Aika pushed the sword's hilt into Ryoko, causing her to cry out in pain as the sword shocked her. Okay, stop, stop. You can stop now. She pleaded as Aika looked down at her, slightly enjoying the pain she was giving her. Now answer me, she said, getting her emotions under control. Naruto would probably know more about Yasho than I do, she offered as she was still smoking from the shock. The Earth Boy? Aika asked curiously. Yeah, Ryoko responded. Before she could send for the boy, 2 black spheres floated down in front of her. Aika-sama, it's time for bed. It informed her later. I am busy. Now go away. She tried to wave it off. I cannot allow that. The queen has given me strict orders, was its argument, and hearing this Aika knew not to disobey. Oh, very well. And take her off to jail, she ordered. Good night, Oju-chan, teased Ryoko, liking to have the last word. Aika huffed at this. Aika-sama, this way, the sphere said, leading the girl away to her sleeping quarters. Spreeks. What happened and what is this place? Asked Naruto, waking up and getting to his feet and looking round to see that he was surrounded by a ring of trees, making it look like a mock cage. Well, this is something. Get captured by a log and then get put in an easily escapable cage. Hope Ryoko is okay. Hey Ryoko, can you hear me? He shouted, attempting to walk out his cage before there was a noise and the trees closed in, blocking his escape and holding him before he backed off. Yes, it is a real cage, then good thing not many can hold me. He grinned, running for an opening, but was caught by the trees each time. Great, beaten by a tree. Ironic thinking about it, he muttered, unaware that someone was watching him. No choice then, sorry tree, he said, pulling out a kunai. However, after a couple of cuts, a voice called out, what are you doing, Ani-chan? This broke his concentration on cutting his way out. Huh? Naruto looked to see a young girl in front of him looking half his age, blue-haired, done up in long pigtails that were tied in cute red ball elastic bands, big cute pink eyes, and fair-toned skin with 2 small green triangles on her forehead. Her dress was a green-like kimono with a bright green bow on the back, but it was cut off at the sleeves. Under that was a long-sleeved pink shirt that closed in on her wrists, and pink pants with brown slipper-like shoes that red bows on them. Who are you? Asked Naruto confusedly. My name is Sasami, she answered cutely. Sasami, how do you mind telling me what you're doing here? Sasami-chan, he said, hoping to get some answers as screaming at her wouldn't help at all, and he always tried to be nice to girls. Silly, I'm just looking around this ship, hoping to find something to do, she answered. Really, you wouldn't happen to be from another planet, would you? He asked as she nodded. I come from planet Juri, she answered, holding a weasel-like animal in her arms. Then what were those huge logs from before, he asked, a little curious. She giggled, having the 2 guardians called logs. They're not really logs, they're our guardians, our servants, she informed him as he nodded. I see him going need a lot of ramen after all this, first Ryoko, then this other girl. I'm on what is most likely a spaceship, and I'm more than likely the first to meet a race from another planet. I really can't have a normal adventure, can I? He thought to himself. Ani-chan, what's your name? She asked, wondering who this blonde-haired man was. Oh sorry, where are my manners, he said, kneeling down to her level. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. Nice to meet you, Sasami-chan, he said politely. She smiled as the boy seemed really nice before pulling out an odd wooden device. Will you play with me? She asked before activating the device, making the trees part, allowing Naruto escape. Once out, Naruto looked over Sasami. You know, I didn't expect an alien race to look so much like we do, he commented before taking note of the weasel. Cutie muttered to himself, making the girl blush, thinking he was commenting on her. The weasel-like animal shot out a long tongue, licking him in the face, making his chuckle as he always loved the affection that animals gave. He petted it on the head before noticing Sasami's device. That looks like my sword, he said out loud, moving his hand to his back pocket so he could compare, only to find it wasn't there anymore. Damn, it's gone, he said. What's wrong? Asked Sasami, curious. I had a sword similar to that thing you have there, he muttered before looking over at Sasami, who had a cute expression on. Hey Sasami-chan, do you think you could help me? Do you think you could help me find my sword, friend, and take me home? Don't really know how I ended up in this situation, he asked, rubbing the back of his head. She put on a thinking expression before looking back at him with a smile. Well, will you do me a favor too? She asked back, in a voice that Naruto couldn't say no to even if he wasn't in his current predicament. Spreeks. In her sleeping quarters, Aika brushed absently at her hair as she thought about the situation up to now. She sighed and turned on a holographic message machine she kept since her Ani-sama left. When it turned on, it showed a young man with long black hair, tanned skin, and purple eyes wearing royal Juri clothing. My darling Aika, I must leave here tomorrow morning. To do battle with a rampaging criminal, but not to worry, I will defeat this criminal and return, and when I come back, she turned off the message. And when you come back, I was to become your bride, but you never returned. Aika finished what the message Yasho would have said as his eyes wavered in remembrance. She then looked at the Tenchi can she had on the table nearby and picked it up. Ani-sama, she whispered sadly to herself as tears trailed down her face. As Aika turned in for the night, Naruto and Sasami had just arrived near her sleeping quarters. The two of them watched as the lights turned off, signaling Aika going to sleep. "My sister's room is right over there, she's asleep now, so you know what to do," she said quietly but stifling a giggle. "Get help finding the sword, Ryoko, and getting home while getting the chance to pull a prank. This'll be worth it," he thought to himself grinning, "so I get in and grab her head ornament." He asked as she nodded. "That's right," she answered as he got up and cracked his neck and fingers. "Kami, I've wanted to pull a prank all day," he said, running across the field, barely making a sound as he went. As he got close, all Naruto could think was, "I can't believe there are no patrols here." Not that him complaining, but really if this was a kidnap mission, it would be easy pickings, he thought, climbing the building. When he got to Aika's sleeping quarters, he found her sleeping silently. "She pretty now for the head ornament," he thought, going over to the bed silently. Looking at her head, he tried to think how to get it off him. "Can't substitute without waking her," looks fixed onto her head. "And I doubt she's a heavy sleeper like me. Oh well, guess this will have to do." He pulled out the only piece of equipment he always had, a black marker. Going over and with expert skill he began drawing on her face, giving her a Hitler mustache, swirl marks on each cheek, glasses. And bussy brows, style eyebrows drawn to look angry, and writing "U-N" on her chin to mark his work. Putting the marker away, he resisted to laugh before taking note of what she was holding. "My sword, so she had it. Well, I better get that first," he thought, reaching over to grab the hilt, but found the sleeping girl had a hard grip. Getting into a better position, he climbed onto the bed and positioned himself over. "Please, for the love of Kami, don't wake up," he prayed slightly for his health. "Ani-sama," she muttered as Naruto made to grab the sword again and pulled at it, but she held strong and her eyes started fluttering open. "Huh?" she muttered, opening her eyes, seeing Naruto's face that looked a little scared. "Why, Imph?" Her cry was stopped by Naruto covering her mouth. "This isn't what it looks like," he said with a straight face before jumping off the bed, sword in hand, just in time before she was able to kick him off. "Azaka, Kamadik," she called as the two guardians appeared. Well, Naruto sped off. "I want you to put that scoundrel to death," pointing in the direction of the fleeing Naruto. She was a little surprised by his speed. "Oh my, how quickly he runs," she muttered as the guardians began chanting, "Here we come, here we come," while firing at Naruto, who dodged the blasts. Running towards Sasami, Naruto scooped her up, carrying her bridal style. "We're out of here, Sasami-chan," he said as she squealed in excitement. Naruto continued to weaving in and out of the guardians' blast. "Sasami-chan, can't you do anything about those two?" he asked. "They're my sisters." "There's nothing I can do," she said happily. "Terrific," he muttered before coming to a fork in the road. "Ani-chan, this way," she pointed as Naruto just ran, hoping to save his and the girl's skin. "In there, hurry," she said, pointing to a hollow tree which he jumped inside to find a hole that was inside, all the while Sasami laughing at the fun she was having. "Yeah, it's gonna take a lot of ramen after tonight," he thought, falling down the hole. "Breeks." Ryoko yawned inside of her cell. She hoped Naruto would get here soon, knowing just how crafty the boy was. As luck would have it, Naruto popped up from the ground nearby the cage. "Well, look who's here," she muttered happily, seeing the blonde. "Now where are we?" Naruto asked himself, his back turned to the cage with Ryoko. "Yoo-hoo, yoo-hoo, yoo-hoo," she shouted out to him, waving. "Ryoko-chan, thank Kami," he said happily. Well, she smirked hearing the suffix. "Great timing," she said, ready to bust out of her current position. "You okay in there, Ryoko?" he then asked, getting a slight pout from the woman. "Yeah, never better, but would you drop the chan?" she questioned as Naruto nervously looked away. Maybe we should get you out of there first," hoping to drop the subject in that case. "If I had my gems I could get out of here," she suggested. "No, nice try, but no," he said. Ryoko sighed and Naruto touched the cage, unknowingly making the Tenchi Ken glow. Almost immediately the tree branches opened up for Ryoko. "What did you do?" she asked, a little impressed. "I don't know," he said, touching the wood of the cage. Nah. Heard Ryoko as she felt something tug her sleeve. Looking down, she found Sasami. "What's this?" Ryoko asked Naruto. Sasami bowed. "Hello, it's nice to meet you, Sasami," she said, smiling. Yeah," responded Ryoko, taken aback by the little Jurian girl in front of her. "Hey Ani-chan, who is this old lady? Is she a friend of yours also?" asked Sasami, making Naruto wince, knowing how girls absolutely hated having their age commented on. "Old lady?" said Ryoko, her hair flaring slightly and her anger barely restrained before her face, putting on a big smile and putting her hand on Sasami's head. "Hi, I'm his friend, but I'm not an old lady, you know what I mean, little girl," she said, shaking the girl's head hard. Sasami smiled even though her neck was hurting a bit. "Ow, that kind of hurts," she said in a slightly pained voice, especially when her neck could be heard popping. "Wonder why I didn't have any problems controlling the trees," Naruto muttered to himself. "Hey, that's Yasho Ani-chan's sword." Sasami pointed to the sword's hilt that was poking out his pocket. Naruto blinked, pulling it out. "What? Yasho Ani-chan?" he said, confused. She can't mean Yasho from the legend, can she? He thought, wondering just how old the girl was. But why were you able to use it?" she asked him, her finger on her lip. Ryoko clapped her hands as she laughed. "Oh yes, show me that sword of yours, Naruto," she told him in a happy tone. said Naruto, unsure of what she was planning. Now don't move, she said as she got on her knees before wrapping her arms around him by his neck, making him blush at her closeness. Ryoko, what are you doing? Ryoko just continued smiling. You can trust me, relax, she said, pulling him close, pressing his body against her. Ryoko, please just tell me. He was cut off as she put her head against his. Be quiet, she said softly with her eyes closed. Naruto did as he gazed at her face, so beautiful he thought, while Sasami watched in slight curiosity. The gems on Ryoko's wrist and on the sword began to glow, but Naruto was transfixed on Ryoko's face, never really being this close to many women before without threat of a beating. He couldn't help it as he closed his own eyes and moved his head forward, bring his lips close to her, getting a whiff of her scent, which was a combination of sake and the forest. Just as his lips were about to meet hers, a voice called out, "That's far enough," came the voice of Aika. Naruto moved his head back in surprise, while Ryoko scowled. Damn that woman, I nearly got him to kiss me, she thought as she knew what Naruto had been about to do. Ryoko's face then cracked up as she saw Aika's face, and here comes the Oju-chan, hahaha, she couldn't help but burst out seeing the drawings on her face and also spotted the signature on her face and knew it was Naruto's work. Sasami was giggling too as she moved herself behind Naruto's legs. What is so funny? Aika demanded, glaring at the pair. Oni-chan, your face, it's funny, have a look, said Sasami in between giggles and pointing. Sasami, what are you doing here? Aika asked, still annoyed at the laughing faces as Naruto had joined in now. I was bored, she responded. Oni-chan, you really need to check your face, she said, trying to stop giggling. Oh very well, as Akashi ordered. The guardian responded, bring a mirror, showing Aika's face to her. When she saw the work of art on her face, she first thought it was Ryoko, but remembered the Earth Boy's name, Naruto, and saw she had the initials U-N, and figured it was him, especially since he had been close to her a few minutes ago. She rolled up her sleeve, wiping off some of the ink from her face. She glared at Naruto, who whistled innocently. I believe your name was Naruto, correct? She asked, thinking of how she could punish the man for his offense to her face. Yeah, that's me, he said with a grin on his face, almost make Aika lose control, since he was acting like a male Ryoko. Ryoko herself was chuckling, as he had also gotten under Aika's skins too. I have a question I'd like to ask you, she said seriously, which Naruto responded to by stopping his smirk and nodding, seeing as this was important to her, plus had his fun. Seeing his face, Aika continued, where is the owner of the sword you hold? She asked. Well, he died a long time ago, I think, he answered honestly to her as Aika went wide eyes. You're lying, she said, not wanting to believe. Well, I don't know for sure, but I think so, he said. Obviously the sword's owner is someone important to her, he thought, seeing her face and look of pain. What was his name, she asked, almost not wanting to know. It was Yasho, he said, seeing her face going pale at this. No, she said in horror. Does that help? He asked, rubbing the back of his head, feeling a little guilty of his prank now, seeing her face. Oh yeah, he died, didn't he? Ryoko said, not much caring. That's too bad, she said, but Naruto turned, giving a small glare. It isn't true. You're trying to trick me, she shouted, not wanting to believe Naruto and trying to convince herself. Azaka, Kamadik, she called. The two replied as the two rushed forward. Oni-chan, said Sasami to her sister, not liking her rash action. Ryoko grabbed Sasami and held a beam blade to her throat. Order your blockheads to back off, she told Aika. You play dirty to the end, said Aika, as she mentally commanded the ship to restrain Ryoko, which it did by vine coming out the ceiling and tie her up. Bye lady, said Sasami. Well, Ryoko looked a little sheepish at her situation. Sasami, come over here, Aika called to her sister. She was about to do so, but saw Naruto about to be attacked by one of the guardians and quickly got in front of him, her arms out. Get back, Azaka, no. Get back, she ordered, hoping to stop him. Sasami-chan, Naruto shouted, looking at the sword before holding it out as it glowed, causing the ship to restrain the two guardians and Ryoko being set free. What are you doing, Naruto? Asked Ryoko. Kinda making it up as I go, he answered honestly. What's happening? I gave you an order to capture them, Aika said, watching the two get captured before noticing the glowing. The sword, the master key, is in sync with him. It shouldn't react to anyone but those of royal blood, so why is it? The realization came to her. It can't be, no, it can't be true, she said, dropping to her knees. Seeing her distracted, Ryoko wrapped her arms around Naruto's neck, who shivered as she held her body close. Naruto, Ryooki, you want to go home, don't you? She told him. Just make sure to return my house, alright, Ryoko shined as Naruto mentally called to the ship. I can't believe it, I won't believe it, it is impossible, Aika said in denial, almost in tears. Suit yourself, said Ryoko as the ship began shaking. But you should know where you're standing isn't quite safe, she said as Aika jumped out of the way as the bottom spike of Ryooki burst through the floor. This caused the guardians to get thrown in their restraint, spinning Aika to the floor. Told you so, Ryoko said with a victorious grin. Let's go, Naruto, she said, pulling him to Ryooki. Thank you, little girl, she called to Sasami as she and Naruto phased through the crystal. Bye-bye, Ani-chan. Sasami waved to Naruto, while an embarrassed Aika pinned down ordered to her guardian do something quickly, but as Aka was unable to move due to the restraints. "I'm sorry," it stuttered. "I will never forgive that woman," Aika vowed against Ryoko. Breaks. As Ryoko and Naruto appeared on the bridge of Ryooki, Ryoko immediately took control. "I'll make her follow us to Earth, as long as she's up here she'll only give us trouble," she said, voicing her plan. "Just don't hurt them too badly," Ryoko said. Naruto agreeing. You're actually agreeing with me, why?" she asked, surprised by his response. "Right now she's really upset but also stubborn with you as her target of frustration. With that, who knows what she'll do. However, I ask you to go easy because of Sasami-chan. She's a nice girl and doesn't need to get hurt," he explained, which she nodded to. "Alright, let's do this," she said with a smirk. Ryooki turned over, putting Aika's ship face the Earth now before falling toward Earth, making the two ships heat up on re-entry. Ryooka's mass is growing abnormally, informed as Aka to Aika as an alarm sounded. "Why aren't they under our control?" Aika asked calmly. "Despite the situation they were in, they must have used He Master Key," said Kamadik. The ship rocked as a piece of the ship broke off from the heat. "What are you doing? Attack, attack." Aika ordered. "It's too dangerous," said Kamadik. "Its descent velocity is increasing. If we fall to Earth, even Ryo will not escape serious damage," said Azaka to Aika. "How unreasonable that woman is," Aika said aloud, as Ryoko's giggling could be heard over the speakers. "Ryoko-san, stop this immediately," Aika demanded at the image of a smiling Ryoko on screen. "As she did, more parts of Ryo broke off. Even you won't be able to escape unharmed. Say something," she demanded, but only succeeding in making Ryoko smile more. There were more explosion on the exterior of Aika's ship. "Stop this immediately. I know you can hear me," she demanded as Ryoko smiled, enjoying once more getting one up on Aika. 50 seconds to Earth's surface, said a panicked Kamadik, while on Ryooki Naruto was starting to question his logic and trusting Ryoko. Ryoko, don't you think this is going too far?" She smiled, not looking from the screen. "Not at all, Naruto," she said happily, while Aika stared at Ryoko's image. "Ryoko-san, please stop," she said. But it had no effect, and seeing this, Aika made her decision: jettison the ship's exterior, she commanded. The ship's wooden frame shot off, cushioning them as they hit the water, but the red part of the ship was still attached to Ryooki as they slipped across the water. Naruto sighed slightly at Aika's thinking and looked to Ryoko, who still had a smile on her face. "She's as crazy as me." She knew Aika would make her ship's exterior take the hit of the impact and so prevent her from leaving Earth, he thought, before he sounded the ship to be spinning. The extra weight of Ryo made them bounce on the water, making everyone dizzy and unable to stop them from crashing into a nearby lake. Breaks. Naruto sighed. "Just my luck," he thought, eating the breakfast Sasami made for him and Ryoko. "Hey, cut that out, we got back safely, didn't we? You should be thankful. Of course the house is now a bit outside of Konoha and close to the Shire near my cave." "It's good," said Ryoko, offering him one of the dishes. "Thanks, Ryoko-chan," he said, seeing as she didn't seem to mind the suffix. "You're lucky you don't have a scratch," she said, smiling. "Yeah, but my scratches heal very quickly," he thought to himself. "You really ought to be thanking me," she continued, her eyes half closed. "After all, I took care of you and protected you at my own personal risk," she said before being cut off. "But most of the crash was absorbed by our ship, that's why you were okay," Sasami explained, tucking into her food too. "So that's why our landing point was off," Ryoko said, thinking in mild wonder before shivering. "I almost landed back in that damn cave," she said, not wanting to back to that place ever again. "Where'd Aika go?" he asked, taking a bite of some of the fish. Ryoko smiled, seeing how Naruto acted, and was thankful, knowing that Naruto was so caring, before pointing to Aika by her crashed ship. "She's over there." Aika outside was trying to pull pieces of her ship Ryo out of the water. She managed to get a small piece before looking at the state of her ship. She rushed back to the home. "Sasami, what are you doing? Come and help me save Ryo, my ship," she pleaded to her sister. Sasami lowered her chopsticks from her mouth. "It's too big for us to handle," she said. "It'd help, but there's no way to get it all out." "I'm sorry," added Naruto. "We'll never get it out." Sasami finished, sending Naruto a thankful nod for the offer. Aika silently fumed in tears hearing this before running back to her ship. "I can't get stranded on a remote planet like this. I simply can't. Oh, my ship, my Ryo," she cried, tripping, throwing the pieces of she had at the main part of Ryo. This caused it to sink further into the lake, which Aika began to cry over slightly. Naruto inside could only think, well, what's life without a few surprises, and who knows, it could be interesting with these girls around when we head to Konoha. Ryoko, on the other hand, only smiled seeing him accept all this and letting her stay. "I wonder how long it would take me to get him to kiss me again," she pondered. Who could know what the universe held for the blonde-haired ninja? At dawn's first light, Naruto was currently in the process of practicing the kinjutsu Ryoko taught him with his weighted bokken. Ryoko had gotten him weighted clothes and bokken to help out, which consisted of a blue short-sleeved kimono top and gray pants. Simple attire, but effective. Of course she had to convince him she hadn't stolen them from the village, which she promised she hadn't stolen them from Konoha. What Naruto didn't know is she did steal them from Mist. Naruto was quickly improving his strength and speed, he hadn't taken them off since he got them. Ryoko was proud of him taking the initiative in learning the sword, including moves Naruto would never have dreamed of. An example was channeling his chakra into the blade and releasing it all at a single point. With Naruto's reserves it was a devastating attack. He loved training with his sword as it made him feel like he wasn't talentless. However, Naruto made sure that all he had learned didn't go to his head and remembered that by taking up the sword you must respect it, for it is an extension of yourself, so you should never turn your back on it and use it wisely, not for things like revenge. Thinking back, Naruto wondered what the techniques he knew would be like if he had the Tenchi-kun, since the blade was as strong as steel yet light as a feather, it only being a hilt. He had given it back to Aika as a sign of respect, and the fact it technically belonged to her and her half-brother, who he learned from Sasami, was meant to be married to. He grew a little curious over hers and Sasami's age, but then recalled Ryoko and her age, so forgot about it. Sasami had elaborated in that she and other Jurians had longevity and could live hundreds of years without it showing. Naruto couldn't help but wonder if he would be like that, since only their family was able to use the Tenchi-kun at all, which meant he was related to them. Finishing his kata, he breathed out a deep sigh, thinking soon he'll be heading back and I won't ever be the same as before. Breaks. Aika woke up with a scream. The dream she just had was the day Yasho had left to chase after Ryoko. She then chased him into somewhere dark, but just as she was about to reach him, he turned around and phased into that Naruto person. The remembrance of him giving the Tenchi-ken back to her playing fresh in her memory within the dream. She had then screamed out in sadness only to wake up. She looked to her side and picked up the Tenchi-ken, holding close to her heart. He isn't dead, he can't be, she kept insisting to herself. She looked over to her sister and saw she was happily sleeping, so she went up to the window that was in their room and looked to the morning view, looking at the remaining wreckage of her Ryuo that was sticking out of lake nearby. She couldn't help but long to leave this world. I wish I could go home to planet Juri. She then noticed something moving in her vision. Huh. Looking down, she saw it was Ryoko in a new dress. This one having a green and orange jacket, the green being on right half, while the orange being on the left half, a white long kimono that was parted a bit to show her cleavage with the sides cut to show her legs, showing that they were covered in red spandex pants that seemed connect to the equally red shoes that had a metal circle at the top end of them. What's she up to so early? She pondered, seeing Ryoko. What a disgusting thing to see first thing in the morning, that monster woman. She closed the curtains in a huff, going to get changed. Ryoko, meanwhile oblivious to Aika's gaze, was walking across the lake looking for something. Let's see, she said, phasing down to the surface of the lake where a lot of the rubble was of the two ships. Looking through the wreckage without apparently needing to breathe, she spotted a small black egg and smiled, finding it before picking it up and rubbing it against her cheek caringly. Breaks. Sasami opened the door to the apartment she and her sister were sharing and walked out before turning back to the person. Not come on, One-sama, she said politely to her sister. Aika poked her head out the door. No, I don't want to, she said, refusing to leave. One-sama, I've stayed in this room for 1 whole week. Going to think we Jurians don't even have the courtesy to say hello, she insisted to Aika, trying to coax her out the room. No, he won't, Aika argued loudly before blushing at her outburst, but the head of the home is out now, isn't he? She asked, her hand on her cheek. Naruto Nai-chan is home, plus Naruto Nai-chan is the head of the house, it's him who takes care of it, Sasami told her sister. She then put on a dad look. One-sama, this is very hard on me, she said with a small sigh. I'm sorry, Sasami, I should be the one to worry about these things, Aika apologized, making Sasami raise an eyebrow before sighing in relief. Aika adjusted her kimono before turning to the door. Let's go, she said, calmly walking out the room. Sasami ran ahead of Aika and went down the stairs before looking back and making sure Aika was following. The only slight problem was that Ryoko poked her head up from her position on the lobby's couch, making Aika huff. Seeing the woman, how unpleasant, she muttered. Seeing her sister act stubborn, Sasami began to pull her by her hands. One-sama, she said, basically dragging her to the bottom of the stairs. Well, look who's here, it's been so long I was beginning to think you died, said Ryoko to Aika, taunting a little. Sasami looked round. Where's Naruto Nai-chan? She asked, not seeing the blonde Naruto. Well, he isn't here, that's for sure, she said, holding the egg in her lap. And I worked so hard to get One-sama out here, said Sasami, disappointed before noticing the egg. Huh. She walked over to Ryoko. What have you got there? What is it? She asked, happy. Ryoko smiled at the excited girl. You want to know? She asked. She nodded with a yes. Looking at them slightly before huffing and Ryoko smiling, enjoying her playing with Aika before turning to Sasami. It was born this morning, isn't it adorable? She said, holding it to her cheek. Did you lay it? Sasami asked, interested about the egg, but Aika decided to interject. Sasami, don't touch. It was then the door slid open to reveal Naruto yawning slightly, and he rubbed his shoulder. He blinked slightly seeing Aika outer room. Aika-san, he said surprised, blushing at her recent behavior, and noticing the cut face of Naruto, she bowed to him. Please allow me to express my gratitude for your hospitality to the Juri royal family. She looked up to see his slightly confused face. Anyway, thank you very much. She bowed again to him as he chuckled. It's fine, just don't bow to me, I don't deserve it, Aika-san, he said, rubbing the back of his head, smiling slightly. Hey Oju-chan, don't you want to know about this egg? Asked Ryoko, breaking the mood, not liking the blush of Aika's face. I saw him first, and I know him better, little girl, she thought, smiling on the outside. Aika turned her head up at Ryoko. I have no intention of listening to your insults, she said, huffing again before noticing something in the corner of her eyes. Sasami, what are you doing? The owl get germs from that, she asked as her sister rubbed the egg in her hands. Sasami stopped her rubbing and looked up, but Ryoko Ni-chan's baby is going to be born and that's definitely something I want to see, she said, cheerfully holding the egg happily. She then turned to the mother. So are you married, aren't you? Who is the father, she asked a woman who had a cat-like grin, suggesting mischief was coming before whispering into her ear. Sasami, said Aika loudly, not wanting her young sister to spend too much time with Ryoko. Seeing her reaction, Ryoko continued whispering, you see. She finished as Sasami exclaimed, Naruto Nai-chan. In surprise, shocking Aika, who turned to the now really confused Naruto. He then took note of how angry Aika was looking. What? Aika-san, are you alright now? He asked a little worried seeing the angry woman. That certainly is none of your business, she shouted at him before pointing at Ryoko. Why don't you just go over there and hold that egg with your monster woman, she told him. Aika-san, please don't call Ryoko-chan that. And what's this egg? He asked as Ryoko leaned against his shoulder, smiling. I'm so happy to be bearing the child of the man I love. Child? When the heck did this happen? Ryoko-chan, what's going on, he asked, wondering if Ryoko's reproduction process was different from a human's, as she placed the egg in his hands later. Now hold it tight, it won't be long, she said, amused. All eyes turned to the egg. Okay, seriously, what's going on, asked Naruto, as he felt the egg shake before cracking, and a brown rabbit foot popping out of the shell. What? Said Naruto, confused, still holding onto the egg, not wanting to hurt whatever it was. Sasami gasped watching but began giggling seeing the head of the animal pop out, showing a cat-like face with bunny-like ears, odd-like, a mix of two animals. A cabbit, he thought as the cabbit meowed with its eyes closed. Naruto took note of the ruby jewel on its forehead before Ryoko took the cabbit and began nuzzling it to her face. Come here, my little Ryooki-chan, she said in a loving tone. Ryooki, your ship? You mean that this cabbit is, he asked as Ryoko laughed at his expression. Ryooki. Aika narrowed her eyes at the little furry animal in Ryoko's arms. Yeah, this is Ryoko's child, she said, petting its furry head. Can a ship have a baby? Asked Sasami, wide-eyed and amazed looking at Ryooki. Sure, my ship was totally destroyed, so it reproduced itself, she said, smiling at the faces of Naruto and Aika. You must be crazy to think it's Naruto's child. Here's no blonde hair for a start, but she does have his whiskers, she chuckled. Yeah, I thought that was kind of strange, commented Sasami in an amused tone, while her sister huffed at the spectacle. This is so typical, you're all making fun of me, she said, turning around to leave. Aika-san, please wait, we're not making fun of you, said Naruto, grasping her arms, at least I'm not. She shrugged off his arms before slapping him across the face. Let go of me, you brute, she said, as the sound echoed. I thought you were different, you're no better than that demon, so go back to her, she said harshly before running out. However, as she left, Naruto felt his anger rise at her comment, his eyes changing to slitted red. Ryoko was quick to react, putting Ryooki down and getting to his side. Naruto, calm down, you don't want to scare Sasami, she whispered as he wondered what she was talking about, but followed her instructions anyways. Ryooki was climbing the coach as Sasami watched and quickly became friends, as Ryooki jumped up and perched herself on her shoulder with a happy meow. Ryoko meanwhile was still at Naruto's side. You okay, Naruto? She asked, worried slightly. Yeah, I'm fine and thanks, but what was that? Ryoko sighed. She didn't want to be the one to tell him, but no one else would and he needed to know. They'll tell you later as it's important, but I don't think the others are ready to know, she whispered as Sasami played with her new friend. Alright Ryoko-chan, he said as she put on a big smile. You are so sweet. Her hands began rubbing his chest and her face to his whisker marks, much to his hidden pleasure. You're so sweet to be so trusting of me, she said happily as her hands went further south, making him flush. Oi, above the belt please, he said, hoping to control his body's reactions. Fine, I can do this later, but Naruto, where is the sword? She asked, ceasing her roaming hands for now. The sword? I gave it back to Aika-san, he said as she went bug-eyed and grabbed his shirt. Hearing this, you what? But that sword contains all of my energy sources, she exclaimed before putting on a small fainting act, swaying back. What does she use? As if Naruto just rubbed the bridge of his nose. I'm going back to training, he said, leaving, and once the door closed, Sasami looked a little worried. Oni-chan, she said. Seeing her face, Ryoko smiled down at her. Don't worry, Naruto has taken care of himself for a long time, he just takes his training very seriously especially since he found his calling in the sword, she said to the younger alien, although Hess inherited his mother's stubbornness. Ryooki then turned on her position on Sasami's head before jumping off and heading to the window. Ryooki-chan, Sasami said, following the cabin. Said animal ended up running into the glass door, making herself get hit and rolled back before getting up, shaking her head. What is it, Ryooki-chan? Sasami asked. She looked out the window to see her sister as she looked at the remains of Ryooki, then phased through the window like Ryoko could. Hey, where are you going? Said Sasami, trying to follow, but forgetting she couldn't phase the walls and banged her head as Ryooki had. Ryooki-chan. She called. Breaks. Outside, Aika silently stared at the remains of her ship Ryuo, knowing that salvaging it would be near impossible now, and the fact that her brother was most likely dead too. By her feet, Ryooki noticed the sad look on her face and rubbed her head against her leg, hoping to cheer her up. Feeling something against her leg, Aika jumped in surprise, hoping. After a moment she looked down to see the culprit was Ryooki, who meowed happily as Aika had stopped crying. Ryooki, she exclaimed with an annoyed face, before trying to shoo her away. Go away, you little dirty thing, she said to the cabbage. Ryooki just tilted her head cutely before hopping toward her, which Aika reacted to by stepping back before the cabbage moved closer. Aika huffed, crossing her arms. Very well, I want you to stay right there, it'll be the one to go away, she said, pointing to herself before starting to leave. Don't you dare follow me, she warned as she walked off and immediately followed by Ryooki. As she walked through the forest, Ryooki continued to follow her. She was constantly checking to see if she was there. She turned off at a footpath before looking back, catching her in the act. One said. Don't follow me, she said as Ryooki stopped and quickly rushed into the bush before poking her head out with a look of sorry. Not much caring, Aika turned back, but then noticed something by Ryooki, the royal teardrop. She said in surprise, seeing a flower that she'd seen many a time on Juri. Bending down, she plucked the flower nearby the cabbage. No, it can't be, she muttered, remembering once offering the flower to Yasho, as it was the same color as his eyes. As the memory hit her of being betrothed to Yasho and to be wed once older, made her start to cry, her tears dripping on the lower part of her kimono. Seeing her crying, Ryooki hopped into her lap and licked her hand as a tear hit her nose, but Aika moved her hands to her face to try and stop her crying. Leave me alone, please leave me alone, she said sadly. Ryooki jumped off as told, looked sad, trying to think of something to cheer Aika up. When she moved her hands from her eyes, she found a flower being held up by Ryooki in her mouth, offering it to Aika. For me? She asked as Ryooki gave her an eye smile, meowing in confirmation, as Aika took the flower, giggling. You funny little thing, she said in a thankful tone. Ryooki hopped in her lap again as Aika started to pet and scratch under her chin. Don't you know that I hate out? She asked in a happy tone as the cabbage licked her hand, making Aika giggle again at the kind actions of Ryooki. Breaks. Back at the Uzumaki home, Ryoko phased through the floor of Aika's and Sasami's room. Looking around, she saw no one was in, and then started to look through all the luggage that was salvaged from Ryuo. Let's see, she muttered, looking for obviously the sword, but unable to find it. Just where would she keep that sword? She asked herself before noticing a holographic image of Yasho. Yasho, her Oni-sama, she said, scowling, but then put on a thoughtful look. Good riddance to him, she said, happy. Oni-chan, where are you? Shouted the voice of Sasami behind the door. This doesn't look good, she muttered, phasing out of the room via a nearby wall. Just as Sasami entered the room, no, she isn't here. Where did everyone go to? She wondered, feeling a little lonely. Breaks. Back outside, Aika sat under a nearby tree with Ryooki napping on her lap. So tell me, what do I do now? She asked the sleeping cabbage. With my spaceship destroyed, I can neither fly nor communicate with my people, she muttered, scratching Ryooka's belly. The only clue I have is the sword. I wonder, she said as she looked over to the lake from her position on the hillside. Could my Oni-sama really be, she muttered as Ryooki yawned cutely in her lap. But you don't understand a word I say, she said as the now awake Ryooki seemed to hear something and jumped off Aika's lap to head toward the sound. What is it? Ask Aika. You'll get lost, she said as Ryooki gestured with her ears before running into the forest. Ryooki-chan, Aika called as she rushed after the cabbage, quickly losing sight of her. I can't find her anywhere, she muttered, concerned for the cabbage, which seemed to be much better than her apparent parent Ryoko. She then heard the sounds of grunting and the sound of something hitting against wood. Coming to a clearing, she found Naruto hopping from crooked wood spikes in the ground while knocking around a piece of wood tied to a rope with a bokken. Aika watched in amazement, seeing the boy easily jumping on the small pillars without showing any signs of stress. Aika looked surprised at the action as charged and started going through the kata. Aika's eyes went wide, seeing Naruto's stance thats as he practiced. An image of Yasho came over Naruto thats, like the swordplay routines of Juri royal family. Oni-sama, she thought in shock as Naruto performed spinning strikes. In addition to it, she had to admit that the moves were excellent additions to the style. It may be a clue to his whereabouts, Naruto-sama, she called before slipping down the slope behind her with a scream. Naruto looked to where he heard his name get called out, walking over to where he heard the scream. What was that? He said before covering his eyes, blushing as in her current position, Aika's luscious legs were bare to see. Ouch, why must I suffer from this kind of disgrace? Aika whined before noticing Naruto and quickly trying to cover her modesty. What are you doing down there? He asked, dropping down the slope to her. Are you alright? He asked, letting his concern for her overtake his hormones. I'm sorry, I'm alright, she answered. Aika-san, said Naruto worriedly. I'm alright. She insisted, getting to her feet before going down again, hissing in pain. It hurts, she told him as she held onto his arm with her own. Naruto noticed the blood from her leg red blood. He muttered to himself, as he had been curious to the color of their blood, being aliens. Ayaka said, confused. Oh, nothing. He waved off his comment. What are you doing there? He asked before going on one knee and examining Aika's leg. It looks like a bad sprain, he said, wrapping a piece of cloth around her ankle. Excuse me, Aika muttered, getting Naruto's attention. That swordplay routine you were performing, she tried to ask what she wanted to ask. Ryoko showed me the basics of the sword and told to just practice those, but it wasn't working for me, so I tried to make my own style, but again it didn't work as I had next to nothing to go on. Then I saw this old man I met a couple of days ago, and he showed me a bit of his style, and I adapted it to suit me better. Aika blinked but nodded, but couldn't stop her sad face. Breeks. Ryoko Ni-chan, Sasami called out to the bummed out woman laying on the couch, bummed out because she couldn't find the Tenchi can anywhere. It's raining, she told the cyan-haired woman. As soon as she made it over to the couch, Ryoko just grunting at what she said. Stop the rain, my sister and the others are still outside, Sasami pleaded to Ryoko. On this planet they don't have a way of doing that yet, she told her. Meanwhile an orange-haired man with multiple piercings sneezed. Everything alright? Asked a blue-haired woman with a flower in her hair. Yes, everything is fine, he informed her. Back with Ryoko, she suddenly had a bright idea. Hey Sasami-chan, do you happen to know where your One-chan keeps Naruto's sword? She asked, happy, expecting her answers from the little girl. She carries it with her wherever she goes, I think, she answered to the best of her knowledge, making Ryoko do a 180. Of course, she muttered, laying back down on the couch. Breeks. Naruto was currently running through the forest with Aika on his back, trying to look for shelter from the rain. He knew being out in it too long would be bad for Aika, as she didn't have his immune system. However, as luck would have it, he came across a shed. Well, I didn't think there was anything this far from the village, he thought, looking at the shed. We must be closer to Konoha than I thought, although I did run quite far, he mused, sliding the door open and walking and placing Aika on one of the benches inside. Once inside, he took off his weighted shirt and wringed it out, not noticing Aika blushing up a storm seeing his developing six-pack and chest, but his body structure wasn't overly bulky, instead seemed to be made for speed. She also took note of the different marking on his stomach and arms alongside the numerous scars over his body. Using one of the storage seals on his wrist, Naruto unsealed a small towel he kept there for training here. You can dry yourself off with this, he offered with a small smile. He noticed that she seemed to be shivering, while also not meeting his eyes. Looking round, he made a small pile of nearby wood and a small metal box, then set them on fire with a lighter, much Aika's gratitude. Knowing she would need to get out her wet clothes, Naruto turned to the door. I'll go outside for a bit, will you dry yourself off, he said, getting a small nod, leaving the shed, closing the door behind him. He shivered a little but shrugged it off, being used to cold weather, before looking up at the sky. Not long now, he muttered, thinking about him leaving the village again. Even if it had only been a week, the village was still being fixed thanks to the damage caused by Aika's ship. Inside, Aika stripped off her wet clothing and laid it down neatly before wiping herself with a towel. But as she did, she thought about the owner Naruto and how she'd been treating him this past week. She also remembered slapping him. I shouldn't have done that, he apologized for that prank a week ago, and he actually wasn't laughing either. Oh, I shouldn't have used those words, I doubt he took it nicely, then again who would, she thought, a little guilty. The sound of clattering came from somewhere in the shed. She looked behind her to see what made the noise, but saw nothing before turning back round, only for the sound of clattering to be heard again. What is it? She asked herself, sitting down just as something jumped from the shadows and landed face first onto her breasts. Her face went red before screaming in fright. Hearing her, Naruto rushed inside. Aika-san, what's wrong? He asked as said girl clung to the boy for protection, and Naruto began searching the room for signs of danger while putting his hands on her waist. Something lunged at me, she said, pressing his body to her own. Looking down, Naruto saw the source of the incident as Ryoko poked her head out with tears threatening to fall from her eyes as she meowed an apology. Naruto sighed in relief. Don't worry, it's only Ryoko, he told Aika as Aika turned her head to see the sad-faced Ryoko. Oh, she scared the daylights out of me, the naughty thing, she said, her hand feeling something soft and warm. She muttered, looking down to see Naruto's face looking up at hers, making her face flush, as did his making the two separate from their position. I guess he'll just go back outside, he said, not wanting Aika to feel awkward around him. Turning to leave outside, she muttered, making his stop and turn to see her concerned face outside. Must be cold, she said, not wanting him to stay out in the rain. Naruto himself was having trouble keeping his blush controlled, as he had little experience being in the same room with women wearing wet clothes like Aika was. The two sat down by the fire while Ryoko roamed around the inside of the shed. I guess I misunderstood certain things, Aika said to Naruto. He said, wondering what she was talking about. Since you were with Ryoko-san, I thought you were her friend, she said to him a little quiet. Well, she is my friend, but I tend to make friends quickly, really, then again I class you as a friend too, Aika-san, he told her, erecting a blush on her face, knowing he didn't dislike her, but it really all started when I went to the cave. He told her. The cave? She asked him curiously. He nodded. There is a cave nearby the shrine where the old man lives, and Ryoko was locked up in it, he explained. My Ani-sama did that, said Aika, knowing how strong her brother was. Yasho, right, Naruto muttered. That's what the legend says, he continued before there was a silence. Can I ask you a question, Aika-san? Oh sure, she nodded, looking up at him as he did the same. What are you going to do now? He asked, concerned for his friend. I know I cannot return to my planet now. I must continue the search for my brother, only it's hard for me having no relatives on this alien planet, she said sadly, knowing that she and her sister were on their own on an alien planet. In that case, just stay with us, he said plainly, and simply am responsible for all this by unsealing Ryoko-chan. Plus he smiled softly, making her face go redder. Since you are related to Yasho, that makes us family too in a way, he said happily. Yasho was my half-brother, she informed him as Naruto stayed quiet for her explanation. You may think it odd to marry your brother. Naruto could only nod. He listened as Aika continued. But even thought my parents arranged the engagement. I was happy about it. Her face then turned sad. Just to think that I won't be able to share this feeling with my Ani-sama. Tears began to fall from her face. Thinking this, I don't know what to do anymore, she said, covering her face. Naruto began to think of something before remembering his ship. It must have been destroyed. Just like yours was, he said before standing up and smiling at her. If he crashed, it means he was stranded here. But if he had longevity like you said, it's very possible that he's still alive, Aika-san, so please cheer up, okay? Him saying this relieved Aika as she smiled, believing his words. He then heard Ryoko meowing, meaning she wanted his attention. He looked down. What's up, Ryoko-chan? He saw she had dragged a basket full of carrots over. Carrots? You want this carrot? He asked, picking one up. She nodded, and he smiled, picking her up and setting her on his lap, feeding her the carrot, which she nibbled up and meowed in happiness at the taste. Carrots, huh? He chuckled as Aika giggled, watching him feed the little cabbit. Eat enough of these, and you'll grow into a spaceship, Ryoko-chan, he said, smiling as the cabbit nodded in agreement, eating her carrot, enjoying the petting Naruto was also giving her. Breaks. After a little while the sound of rain ceased and Naruto opened the door to check outside, seeing clear skies. Well, it looks like it cleared up, he said, looking back to Aika holding out his hand. Well, let's go, he said as Aika stared for a few seconds before taking his hand. The two began making their way back to the house, both fully clothed again, and Aika back on Naruto's back, enjoying the ride to her hidden pleasure. As they walked, she spotted a large tree in the distance. Huh, what is that? She asked as Naruto looked in the direction of the tree. Naruto tried to remember it and then called forth the knowledge. That's the original tree. Apparently it's the tree that the Shodaime Hokage first learned to use Mokuton or wood release, he explained before asking, would you like to go see it? She nodded, feeling something familiar about the tree, and the three of them made their way with Ryoko having several carrots strapped to her back while holding one in her mouth. When they got there, Naruto let Aika walk over to the tree as she inspected it. There is no doubt, this is Funoho, it's alive, she said in relief. Funoho? Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow. My Ani-sama's ship, she elaborated to Naruto. Remember, there was a tree exactly like this on my ship. This tree is the heart and soul of the ship. Naruto placed his hand on the tree's trunk. So this tree can transform into one of those giant ships? He asked, curious, wondering if the tree was the source of the Mokuton ability. She shook her head. No, this tree has taken root, it can't become a ship, she said, taking out the Tenchi-kun and tapping the trunk twice as electricity sparked out the end, making it send out a high-pitched tone. The tree's leaves began lighting up and shooting rainbow-like beams around them, which reflected off the water into the sky. Whoa, what's happening? Said Naruto, slightly amazed at the spectacle. The ship's memory, Aika explained as images of past events began to appear. Memory? Said Naruto, curious as the image became clear. He looked around and saw it was space again, but then he saw something coming out from the darkness of it. What is that? Just then, Ryoko and another Jurian ship flew by. That's my Ani-sama's ship, Aika confirmed to Naruto. As the two fought from their ships on the planet's surface, another fight was being shown, this one showing Ryoko in a sort of berserk-like state, fighting a man in royal clothing, this man having tan skin, red eyes, and long black hair. Ryoko, she almost looks like. He said, remembering how he got in his Jinchuriki state. And that's Yasho, he said, seeing the man wielding the Tenchi-kun against Ryoko. When Yasho's ship shot Ryoko's ship far from the where Funaho had crash landed, he saw a smaller ship eject from and follow to where Ryoko had crashed. Not a second later, that the two seemed to have gone through a tough battle, as even though Ryoko looked relatively unharmed, Yasho was bleeding from an injury on his head and his body looked torn up and bruised. The one thing that was keeping him from getting injured further was Yasho having stabbed Ryoko in the throat, seemingly sucking in the red gems through the beam of the Tenchi Ken that were Ryoko's source of power. Naruto oddly noted the crash seemed to have made the valley and mountains that was around the shrine, so this was how the lake was made, he noted. As soon as the vision of Ryoko having lost Yasho was done, the tree stopped its special lighting effect, ending the vision the two had just saw. You were right Naruto-sama, he is alive. I'm sure of it now, since Funaho is alive, somewhere on this planet Yasho must be alive, also she said happily. She looked at Naruto giving him an apologetic smile to him. I'm sorry I've been cold to you, I'll return this to you she said handing over the Tenchi Ken. Are you sure Aika-san? He asked knowing what it meant to her. You are related by blood to Juri's royal family. I am asking you to protect us until my Ani-sama is found she said smiling. Very well Aika-san, but I'll make sure to keep it safe and wield it with respect he said taking the sword, besides it'd protect you and Sasami-chan anyway. Ryoko-chan too he said with a grin that she giggled too. Ani-sama called the voice of Sasami heading toward them. Ryoko leading her Sasami Aika said in surprise of seeing her sister. Where have you been? You've been gone so long I was worried she asked her big sister. I'm sorry, did you come here all this way by yourself? She asked Sasami who shook her head. No Ryoko-ni-chan is with me and Ryooki-chan met us halfway. She brought us here, she informed Aika with the cabot taking her place on her shoulder. Aika giggled at Ryooki. You are one funny little creature she said as the cabot repositioned itself on Sasami's head. Okay, what a friendly atmosphere said the familiar voice of Ryoko as they all turned to see her standing on the water. Ryoko-chan Naruto waved slightly, seeing her not really having much of a problem with her like Aika did. She phased to his side and stared at Aika. Naruto, how come you've been with this unworthy girl all this time? She asked. One don't talk about people's worth Ryoko-chan, and two Aika-chan was injured, so I cold leave her, he defended making Ryoko sigh knowing he was right, but was happy knowing that was his way as she won't like him any other way. She then noticed the sword in his hand. Ooh you got the sword back Naruto, well done my boy she said happily patting his shoulder. No I returned the sword to Naruto-sama, she informed Ryoko making the woman give Aika a look, but decided to play it off okay, so you're pissed we got it back she said, but it's true Ryoko-chan said Naruto stopping that idea Naruto-kun and I are related by blood, it's really none of your business, she said in a cheerful tone. Electricity began to arc around Ryoko's body. None of my business she said angry and annoyed. I come all this way just to help you she said before turning her head in a huff. Alright, then do what you want she said teleporting away. Ryoko-ni-chan Sasami called to her to help us. Said Aika confused. Ryoko-chan come back there's no need to get upset he shouted hoping to call her back. Ryoko angry was never a good thing. Forget it, let's go, said Aika walking over to him, but knowing Ryoko I don't think it's good having her annoyed he said. Thanks for watching.